This is out in the island, a little way from where I work, a couple miles up the road. We have a public access you can launch your boat or fish from. It's pretty cool. It's very beautiful out here. You really can't see much though, but it's beautiful. It's a beautiful day. The sun is shining. Perfect temperature. These are the invasive species we have to endure, probably forever, and well, till the radiation kills them. But first I want to talk about this, a couple news things. I normally don't get involved with the news, but this all relates. Everything here is a complete circle here. I'm going to start real fast, see if I can complete this circle. And the first part is going to be the illegal aliens, the migration of the people from down south in the southern or Central America and South America and Mexico into the United States. Now, it looks to me like we're getting a bum rush. Now, a bum rush is it's an old term for a football, I think, a football, what do you call them when they move in, you know, football thing. Or in the military was used also. It's when you send everybody on the whole front line, you send them all at once, and you hope that a key guy gets through or a few key guys get through. And if the other people, they can be sacrificed. You know, they're expendable. Okay, so, and in the World War II, that's what the Russians did. They would send maybe 1,000 troops. Most of these people didn't even have weapons. They just had maybe clubs and rocks and shit, and they would rush the enemy lines, the German lines. Of course, the Germans would cut them down with machine gun fire and all kinds of mortars and grenades and things like that. But as the bodies piled up, it made it easier for the next wave to hide behind the bodies, and they'd get a little further, and the next wave would get a little further until they were in a range where they could throw a Molotov cocktail or some, you know, grenade or something, because a lot of them didn't have weapons or good weapons. And if they could get the line disrupted, if they could start one disruption in that line, it would give enough time for other people to pour through, and you know, they were instructed to grab weapons and use the weapons against the enemy. And that's how the Russians did it. It was a bum rush. They rushed up all at once. The first few waves, were more expendable. That's why they're sending children. You know, they're more expendable. But you can damn sure bet that they're also sending key people up. Now, I don't know if this is a drug thing. You know, it could be a weapons thing, a false flag thing. It could be a real attack. You know, I mean, there's a lot of people around the world that don't like America. And I read somewhere once that if a person would take a briefcase of anthrax and stand on top of like a building in a major city, and on a little bit of a windy day, and most of the time at that altitude up on the taller buildings, there's always a draft up there anyway, and it would carry this anthrax far enough it could cause the whole city to close down. Or I always say, you know, I think the terrorists, or the people that we call terrorists, are learning, and let's just hope to God that nobody has the balls to strike a nuclear factory or a nuclear electric company factory where they produce nuclear waste and a little bit of electricity. Because if they do, then we're going to have a world of hurt, because we don't have the technology to deal with this, and it's going to hurt economies. If they would coordinate an attack on 5 nuclear plants around the world, because they know what's going on in Fukushima, they see what's happening there. They're not stupid. You know, a lot of these terrorists have really, really high degrees, education degrees, and they're not really that stupid, I don't think. But let's hope they're not. They don't want to destroy the whole earth. They don't want to destroy themselves too, because that's what will happen. Everyone will be destroyed. But we're being bum rushed in this migration thing. But it relates. It's a religious thing. I'm telling you. It's all this. All has this undertone of this religion thing. Now, you say Ukraine. Well, you say the Ukraine. It's not religious. It's not. No. It's more territorial and disputes between tribal disputes, I guess. But you know, these tribal disputes are all Islamic in nature. Now, if you go back to the 15th century, when the Ottoman Empire conquered that area, I think it was the Greeks, and they settled that area in Crimeia, that peninsula there, back in the 15th century, and that's been mostly the majority Muslim ever since, Islamic. Same as Chechnya. Now, what happened is the Russians, after the war, or during the war, before the end of the war, World War II, by the time they were out of it, 1944, they proclaimed the Muslims were undesirables down there in Chechnya, and they just kicked them out. Now, sort of like the Israelis kicking out the Palestinians, but they sort of gave the Palestinians a place to go. The Russians didn't give the Muslims that get kicked out of Crimea anywhere to go. They just told them to get the fuck out. They said you can go anywhere but here, in Russia. So there is a lot of animosity in that world between the Muslims and the predominantly Catholic Russia, and they're fighting. So it's Catholics and Muslims fighting there, and these guys are coming in from other countries. And I'm thinking, I still don't really have this whole Ukraine thing figured out, but they were coming in from other countries, and I thought, why are they coming in from other countries? Because it's a jihad. In a jihad, you can get other Muslim fighters to come and fight with you. And it doesn't matter if you're Sunni or Sushi or one of these other guys that, or whatever they are, I don't know, Bath or whatever the hell they are. It doesn't matter. So now, let's go back to the migration in America. How's that religious? Because it's always been like a Catholic. It's always been like a Catholic plan to bring. They actually did conquer South America. I mean, it's predominantly Catholic, and it's easy to be Catholic because a lot of these people in South America and Central America, they had these old religions where they worshiped many gods all at once, a polytheism sort of thing, and so when Catholicism was introduced, they could latch on easily because you got all these patron saints that you can pray to. It's just like having a bunch of gods, right? And all these statues and shit. So it wasn't much different than their own religion. And now when these people, I read a story once of this man who came from Honduras, and he was it was featured a lot of people, but this one sort of caught my interest because he came all the way from Honduras, and most of them came from Mexico. And he told about his trip up, and they were calling it like the modern day Underground Railroad. And they were shuffling people up here, and he said that you'd go to the jungle, you'd be, bandits would try to rob you, then you had to deal with all the snakes and the wildlife and the general jungle, and you're paying everybody off, and he says the only time that you had refuge is when in the jungle you'd see that cross just over the horizon. They'd put up a cross, and it would mark the missionary, where the missionaries from these Catholic missionaries would go there to help the people from the South get to America. And I read this probably 10-15 years ago, this article, and he would see this cross, and he knew it was a place of refuge. He knew the Catholics were there. They had food, they had water, you could take a bath, you could get clean clothes, you could get all the necessities, you could get a lot of food, and you could get resupplied for your next leg of the trip. And that's the sole reason why these missions were along this trail, and they're still there. The Catholics thought if they could get all these South Americans and Central Americans and Mexicans into America, that they could actually create a voting block of people, because these people are good Catholics, and no matter what, like the mafia people, they're always Catholic and stuff. They'll stay and be good Catholics. They'll give money to the church, and they will vote in the church's best interest, and that's a major thing there. Once they, it's a couple years, but the Catholics have been around for a long time. They know how to bide their time for hundreds and hundreds of years, and to get what their goal, what they want to achieve. So most people live in their own little timeline, which consists of a few years, and of course the Catholics don't. They have been around for a long time. They've seen people come and go. No big deal. Okay, so we established that the migration is a Catholic thing. It has a lot to do with the Catholics and the Catholic movement, and the Ukraine is a lot about Muslims and mostly Catholics. I mean, there's like 3 or 4 predominant Catholic churches, and there's not many Protestants over there. Now, let's go, of course, to the Middle East. They killed all the Christians in Iraq, all the Christians in Libya. It seems like every time we go in a country, the first thing that the people we put in power do is kill the Christians, the Coptic Christians, Orthodox Christians. Now, these are old denominations. They're the first denominations, and a couple Christian cities that have been there for 1,000 years, maybe more, have been wiped out. Nobody's not saying too much about that, but it's pretty funny. It's not funny, it's ludicrous in a certain way, because the people in charge are the ones that seem to be the protectors of the faith, and they're the ones that are killing everybody. So what is it? It can't be both. Now, so we see the Middle East. I had no idea that this thing in Israel would go to this extreme over those children, or those kids being being killed, and I don't think they're even sure who killed him, except for the Palestinian boy. They're sure that some Israelis killed him and burned him alive or something, and none of this is good. None of it. And I'm telling you right now that you're going to look at some problems in Lebanon. You know, this was all pre-planned. They had to get rid of Lebanon. Lebanon has to be, it has to be totally not considered a country. The best way to do that is nuke them. But what's going to happen is they're probably massing some kind of army or something, or some kind of pretend army, or some kind of army that somebody knows about but it's not really there. Who knows? But this might go nuclear. You know, I'm afraid it might. But once, as I said before, I mean, I don't know if this is going to be it. It's going to happen over there, and this is the way it's going to happen. I thought that probably maybe someone would threaten their nuclear factory, the one that produces the plutonium triggers for their atomic bombs, which they also produce over there in Israel, and they have their own little atomic factory there, and you know that's one of the reasons that shield, that Iron Dome thing was put there, because you know that is really not in a good spot, because of, you know, it's not too many miles from anywhere just to send a bomb right to that factory, or a few bombs. But, you know, I don't know if the people that are in charge really want to do that. You know, I don't know. But if it does, if something does happen, if Israel's threatened, America's threatened, if something happens all at once, you can bet your bottom dollar Israel will launch a tactical nuke. And I think they're just wanting to, because this will get the whole thing rolling. And what's going to get rolling? The Pope is going to step in. You know, the Pope is already with the Imams, whatever the hell they are, Imams, the guys from the Muslim group, Amins, something like that. Okay, and he's already with those guys, and they've been praying and talking and trying to sort this all out. And of course they've been with the Protestants, except for the Protestants that diverted in Israel. And you know, here's another story about that, the Presbyterian church that divested in the companies that support Israel, because Israel's killing people, you know, especially with Caterpillar tractors. So they wanted to divest in Caterpillar, because Caterpillar, you know, supported Israel. And but most of the churches that voted for the divestment was black congregations, not white ones, because only if the vote was really slim, really hardly passed, because it was the whites and the blacks. The blacks wanted it and the whites didn't. Is that crazy? Because the blacks sort of knows what they sort of have a history of oppression, and they kind of can feel for people that are oppressed and things like that. I suppose that's the main thing. But that was a very brave thing to do, very brave. Although they may get kicked out of the church altogether, who knows, or the denomination, who knows. But it's going to be Israel that drops this first atomic bomb, and of course then maybe a few of them they'll drop a few. They'll drop a few because they don't really want that Lebanon there, so they'll probably take care of Lebanon, make it so radioactive nobody can go in there. That way that'll give them complete access to these oil fields out there in the Mediterranean without anybody getting in the way. And but the Pope's going to step in, and Israel doesn't care. Israel just wants to make money. They don't give a shit. And most of these guys do just want to make money. They don't give a shit about religion. You know, to them it's just a way to control people. But you know, people are going to be afraid, because when you see all this nuclear shit going off, and all these people have cancer, and it would be easy just to put some kind of scare tactic on television to make everybody scared, and you'd have people run to you, man. Just run and do whatever you want. And the Pope's going to step in, and all these religious people are going to step in. Oh, it's going to be Joel Osteen and all those TV dudes, and it's going to be the Pope, the Poopster, and it's going to be some Israeli dudes, and it's going to be some Muslim dudes, and the people are going to bite hook, line, and sinker. And who's going to pay? Who is going to be the grand sacrifice? The grand sacrifice, because that's what this is all about, to make that grand sacrifice, like the old religions of Babylon. You know, I mean, they got their God up there now. ISIS is moving right along in Babylon. Isn't that crazy? All right, duck out.